I never expected to find Daniel Whitmore among the silent corridors of St. Mary's home. 63 years on this earth had taught me that life enjoys its cruel ironies, but this seemed too well planned to be coincidence. I had been volunteering there for 6 months, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, reading to the residents, helping with activities, simply offering presence in a place where many had been forgotten by the world outside. It was my way of filling the void Richard left when he passed 3 years ago, my way of turning grief into something useful. But then, on a gray October afternoon, I entered the activity room with a stack of books and saw him. He was bent over a wheelchair, gently adjusting the blanket over an elderly woman's knees, speaking softly to her in a way that made me stop completely. The hair that had once been golden blonde was now pure silver, the shoulders broader and slightly stooped with time. But the way he tilted his head when listening, that particular gesture of running a hand over his neck when he was concentrating, that hadn't changed in 42 years. My heart forgot to beat for a moment. Then it beat so loudly I thought everyone in the room could hear. As if he felt my gaze, he lifted his eyes. I saw recognition wash across his face like a wave, followed by genuine surprise, and then something softer I couldn't name. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the room. Two people who once knew the exact shape of each other's mouths, now strangers with wrinkles and stories that didn't include the other. "Margaret," he said finally, and my name in his voice still had that particular, slightly husky quality that used to make my stomach flip when we were young. "Daniel." I managed to make my voice sound normal, even though nothing inside me was. "I didn't know you volunteered here. I started a few weeks ago. My mother was in a place like this before she died. I wanted to give back." He rose slowly, as if his joints protested slightly, and walked toward me. He stopped at a polite distance, but I could still smell the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something new, something that spoke of gardens and earth. You're well, Margaret. Time has been kind to you." The volunteer coordinator, Martha, appeared then, interrupting the strange, loaded moment. "Oh, you two already know each other. Wonderful. Margaret, would you mind showing Daniel how the reading club works? He mentioned he'd like to join." And so, abruptly and oddly, we found ourselves working side by side, reading to a group of 8 residents who ranged from fully alert to navigating their own private realities. I chose The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway because it always went over well, and began to read while Daniel handed out tea and biscuits, adjusted blankets, held trembling hands. When the session ended and the residents were taken back to their rooms, we were alone in the activity room, surrounded by empty chairs and the heavy silence that comes after many people leave. "You're very good with them," I said, beginning to stack chairs. "I learned by watching experts," he replied, "helping. My mother had dementia for the last 5 years of her life. I cared for her at home as long as I could. I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't know." "How would you?" he asked. "We haven't spoken in." He paused, calculating. 42 years. 42 years, 3 months, and a few days. But who's counting? I tried to make it sound like a joke, but it came out more bitter than I intended. He stopped stacking chairs and looked at me directly. "Do you count?" The question caught me off guard. Honesty or protection? I chose something between. Sometimes, when I hear certain songs, when I drive by specific places, you know how it is. I do. He returned to work, but his voice was lower. "I count sometimes too." I didn't know what to say to that, so I changed the subject. "Martha mentioned you just moved back to town 3 months ago. I spent the last 30 years in Chicago, cardiology. I retired earlier than planned after I lost Karen." My stomach tightened. "Your wife, 2 years ago, breast cancer." It was quick toward the end, which I suppose is a blessing, though it didn't feel like one at the time. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the old pain there, the kind you learn to carry because there's no choice. "I'm sorry," I said, inadequate as it was, "but what else do you say?" "I lost Richard too, my husband, 3 years ago. Heart attack. He was in the garden one minute, planting tomatoes, and the next, Margaret. Daniel put down the chair he was holding and stepped toward me. He stopped closer than before, and there was so much compassion in his eyes I almost cried right then. I'm so sorry. Truly, we survive, I said, blinking quickly. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We survive. But surviving is not the same as living. The truth in that sentence hit me like a punch. Because he was right. I was surviving. Filling days with volunteering, book club, visits with grandchildren, but not really living. Merely existing. Passing time until there was no more time left to pass. Why did you come back? I asked abruptly. Here, to Millbrook. Why not stay in Chicago, where you had your life? Chicago was full of ghosts. Karen was in every corner, every restaurant, every park. I realized I was getting old and bitter, stuck in the past. My kids worry, suggesting therapy, antidepressants. He laughed without humor. So I thought, why not go back to where I started? See if there's something here to remind me who I was before I became just Dr. Whitmore, the widower, the worried father. And is there something that reminds you? He looked at me then, and there was something so intense in his gaze I had to look away. Apparently there is. We met again the following Thursday, and the next Tuesday, and soon established a routine. We arrived at the same time, worked together with the residents, and then had coffee at the little diner in St. Mary's, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his children, a son, a doctor like him, a daughter, a music teacher. I talked about my daughter, a lawyer in New York, and my son who worked in environmental conservation in Colorado. We shared stories of grandchildren, retirement, how strange it felt to have more life behind than ahead, but we didn't talk about us, about what we had been about, why we broke up, until Mrs. Eleanor Patterson forced the issue. Eleanor was 94, with a mind as sharp as a razor, even though her body was failing. She had watched us for weeks, those small blue eyes missing nothing. One Tuesday afternoon, as we were helping her back to her room after the reading club, she gripped my hand with surprising force. You to have history, she declared. Not a question. Daniel and I exchanged looks. We've known each other a long time, I said carefully. Nonsense, you were lovers. I can see it in how you dance around each other, as if choreographed to avoid touching accidentally. She smiled a knowing smile. I was married 3 times, dear. I know unfinished love when I see it. Eleanor, Daniel began, but she waved him off. Don't waste time being polite with me. At 94, I've learned life is too short to leave things unsaid. She looked between us. My first love was a boy named Thomas Riley. I was 19, he was 22. I was going to marry him, I knew it. But then the Second World War came, and he enlisted before he could. He died in Normandy. I never had a chance to tell him I was pregnant. I gasped. Eleanor, I lost the baby 2 months later. My body just gave up, I suppose, without him here. I married a good man 3 years later, had other children, was happy in my way. But not a day goes by that I don't wonder how it would have been. She squeezed my hand. You too have a chance I never had. Don't waste it. After we left her, Daniel and I walked in silence to the parking lot. It was a cold November night that smelled of coming snow. I stood by my car, keys in hand, but unable to get in. We need to talk about this, Daniel said finally. About what happened, why it ended. It was over 40 years ago. Daniel, does it still matter? Apparently it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He leaned against his car, hands in his pockets. You left me, Margaret, without warning, without real explanation. You just said you needed to move on, that we'd become different people. The old accusation in his voice made me flinch. We were different. You were starting your medical residency, working 80-hour weeks. I was teaching, wanting to build a life, have children. You barely had time to sleep, let alone for me. So you gave up, without letting me try. I didn't give up. My voice came out louder than intended. I inhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. I saw my mother spend 30 years waiting for my father to come home from the office, always second. I watched her shrivel, become small and resentful. I was 23 and terrified of becoming her. Daniel was very quiet. I didn't know that. You never told me about your mother like that, because I was young and proud and thought I could handle everything on my own. Tears burned, but I held them back. Then I met Richard. He was different from you, simpler, more present. A history teacher, worked 9 to 5, was home for dinner every night. He seemed safe. Did you love him? The question caught me with its blunt honesty. Yes, I loved him. Maybe not with the same fierce, desperate way I loved you, but I loved him deeply. He was my best friend for 40 years. He gave me a beautiful daughter and an amazing son. We built a good, stable life, but sometimes, when he read the Sunday paper, when we sat in comfortable silence, I wondered how it would have been with you, if you would have made me laugh that way, as if every joke were a secret we shared. If I would have felt that chill down my spine that I felt when you touched me. I wiped a stubborn tear, and then I felt guilty for thinking it, because Richard deserved better. Daniel walked toward me then, closing the distance. He didn't touch me, but he stood near enough that I could feel his warmth in the cold air. Want the truth? Karen was wonderful, kind, intelligent, patient with me when I didn't deserve it. But she knew. On our 20th anniversary, a little drunk on champagne, she asked, "You still love her, don't you?" I denied it, of course, but she just smiled and said it was okay, that she had made peace with loving 80% of me, because that 80% was better than most men's full 100. That's sad, Daniel. It's honest. And caring for my mother, watching her forget everything, my name, my face. Every precious memory. I realized life is too short and unpredictable to waste on regrets, to keep asking what if. So what are you saying? I'm saying we're in our 60s, our spouses are gone, our children are adults. Nothing holds us back except fear. He finally touched me then, his fingers lifting my chin so I had to look at him. And I'm tired of being afraid, Margaret. Tired of pretending that seeing you twice a week is enough. Tired of driving home wishing I could call you, just to hear your voice before I sleep. My heart pounded. Daniel, we aren't those young people anymore. We can't just pick up where we left off. I don't want to pick up where we left off. I want to start again, get to know who you've become, introduce you to who I've become. He paused. Unless you feel nothing. If it's just memory, if I'm a ghost of something long dead, tell me now and I'll stop. It wasn't out. I could have said yes, that it was nostalgia, that he meant nothing. I could have protected my heart, kept safe in my controlled solitude, but I thought of Eleanor, of a lifetime of what-ifs. I thought of Richard, who always urged me to be brave. I thought of Daniel's words, life is too short. You scare me, I admitted, because when I'm near you, I don't feel like a 63-year-old widow with bad knees and gray hair. I feel 23 again. Like everything is possible, and that terrifies me. Why? Because I've already lost so much. I don't know if I could survive losing you again. Daniel smiled then, that smile he always had, the one that made me feel we shared some secret joke with the universe. Then, don't lose me. This time, let's try for real. No pride, no fear, no running away when it gets hard. And if it doesn't work, and if it does, and there, in that cold parking lot under pale yellow lights, Daniel Whitmore kissed me for the first time in 42 years. It was different from our youthful kisses, slower, more deliberate, laden with decades of life lived. But underneath it all, it was still there. That spark, that connection, that sense of being exactly where I belonged. When we parted, we were both crying and laughing at once. So we do this? He asked. For real, slowly, I said. One day at a time. No promises we can't keep. One day at a time, he agreed. Starting with dinner tomorrow. Dinner tomorrow. But you're cooking. I still don't trust your culinary skills. He laughed. That rich sound I'd forgotten how much I missed. Some things never change. In the months that followed, Daniel and I became inseparable. We still volunteered at St. Mary's, But now we dined together afterward, walked Millbrooks Parks, watched old movies on his couch. I met his children, who were cautiously optimistic but clearly protective. He met mine, who were surprised but happy to see me truly smiling again. Eleanor watched it all with obvious satisfaction. "See," she said one afternoon as we helped her with a puzzle. "Proof that old fools like me can be right." "You were never foolish, Eleanor," Daniel said gently. "No, but I was lucky enough to see love find its way back." She held our hands, one in each of hers. "Promise me something. When I go, and it will be soon, don't waste time in mourning. Celebrate. Celebrate that you had this chance." Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks later. Her funeral was small but full of love. When we returned to St. Mary's the following Tuesday, Daniel and I read for the residents with choked voices, but we kept going, because that's what Eleanor would have wanted. That night, sitting in Daniel's living room, he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. My heart leaped. "It's not what you're thinking," he said quickly, seeing my expression. "Well, not exactly." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring. It belonged to my grandmother. Karen never wore it. She said it was too plain for her, but my mother gave it to me before she died. She told me to give it to someone who understood that the best commitments aren't about diamonds or grandeur, but about choosing each other every day. "Daniel, I'm not asking for marriage. Not yet. We're rediscovering one another, taking it slow. Remember," he took my hand, "but I am asking for commitment, a promise that we'll try, that when it gets hard, we won't run, that this time we'll fight for what we have." I looked at the ring, at the man who had been my first love and was becoming something new, something deeper. I thought of all the turns life takes, of how sometimes the way back to the beginning is the longest path of all. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I promised to try, to fight, to stay." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. I don't know how many years we have left. In our 60s, each day is a gift. But I know these days with Daniel, are full of a joy I thought I would never feel again. It's not the reckless love of youth, but something better love, informed by loss, matured by experience, deeper for having been lost once. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we go to St. Mary's together, read to the residents, hold trembling hands, offer presents. Because Eleanor was right about one thing: life is too short to waste. And love, true love, is always worth a second chance.